All right, people. Comments are welcome. Hard questions, save them for later. For someone else.
So who'd like to start?
Sure.
Could you recap what you said about the process, the 1, 2, 3, 4, get the facts, and then the rest of it I forgot?
Sure. So I think we can look at it different ways, right? So let's go here. About that one. This one. So I am always aghast, fascinated really, by how powerful the structure that Kardec created, or that he used to create all this content, and how meticulous he was, and how he can use that same piece, right? That's what personally one of the things that fascinates me, because it's something that's kind of hidden in the sense that we don't pay attention to what's there. He didn't really highlight it, he put it in the table of contents right there. And I really get goosebumps when I think how he really followed his own method, because we can see that by the books that he published. Like, he clearly took that to heart. And as a good researcher, he doesn't really spend a lot of time talking about his methods, how he, how he organized these books, because it would be really boring probably. And he's giving us all the knowledge. But I love that he always looks at facts first. He sees what is around him, and he asks himself tough questions. He asks himself questions like, is this true? Where else can I see it? Where else does it show? We're going to see, among other things, I think in 1863 in his magazine, Spiritist Review, which he used to kind of rehearse topics before, put them out there, that people interact with him, and make comments before he put them in books. He talks about the universal control of the spirits. And by that he means, if something is true, then it will show up in many different places, in many different times, by many different people. And I think that's one of the great things he does when he goes around his things. He's always asking, have I seen this somewhere else? Can I make connections to other things? Or is it just an isolated phenomenon? If it's just an isolated phenomenon, then he doesn't lead that much credence into it. But he always asking himself, how do I know this? Right? How can I be sure? And then once he does that, he starts saying, okay, now that I am confident that this is a fact, right? I see that in many places. I can see that that makes sense. How do they connect to each other? How does this relate to this? And once it does that, you start having a bigger picture, have some ideas of how things work, right? So if we know, for instance, there are spirits, and we know that we live on after a physical body as spirits, right? That we are. Then the next natural question is, okay, so where do spirits go? Like, what are all these spirits, the essence of those who are alive, when they pass? So what happens to them? Do they just wait there and sit until they are born again? Or do they interact with each other while they're in the beyond, so to say? These are fascinating questions, I think, because they're pretty obvious questions, but we don't often think about them. But he takes the time to ask himself these questions and to question his assumptions. We all make assumptions. We just don't know. So he's always asking that. And once he has his ideas, okay, so there is this world of spirits, and he's asking, he's engaging. And then he says, okay, if there is this world of spirits out there where it's something beyond the physical body, and we know, right, he's connecting the ideas now. He knows that we're spirits and we're going to die, we're going to be, the physical body's going to die, but we live on. And there is all this other people that are going to go through the same process, and just, and they live together. So we don't stop interacting with each other. Okay, and we know that we're going to come again to the physical body, and we're still going to be the people that we were before, or the spirits that were before. So how does it work? Should I behave differently? Does it mean that I can just get away with things now? Because, no, I have to change things, because I come back. My problems are still going to be there. The people that I hurt are still going to be hurt by it. There's still going to be difficulties in dealing with those people because I've hurt them. So I should try not to hurt them, or I should try to make it up. And he starts developing from the ideas that he's developing into the philosophy. Okay, now I understand why Christ said, do unto others that you like to do, and have done unto yourselves. And actually, we sometimes forget that Christ did the upgrade on that when he was at the end of his passage here with us. It says, a new commandment I give you, a new commandment I leave you, right? Love one another as I have loved you. It's no longer do unto others what you would like to be done unto you. It's do unto others what Jesus would do unto others. Because sometimes we don't have the good judgment, right? We want bad things for ourselves so we don't realize. But Christ didn't. So it's starting to think not only of other people and saying, what would you like, but what would Christ want for you? So he develops this whole philosophy, but he's really big on the application piece, right? Because you have to. You have to put all this to the test. Right? You have to get all these ideas that you've worked on and apply it to the world. That's the message that Christ did. He didn't just sit in a corner office in Jerusalem, right? Drum something up and say, all right, apostles, I got this book, go out there and tell people about the great ideas that I had, right? He didn't. In fact, he didn't write anything down. He was all about action. And so we have to do that. And it's a fantastic thing because only through action do we experience things and then we revise our concept of things. There's a great sentence by the French thinking Rousseau that says, in practice, the theory is different. Right? Sometimes we have this theory and we put it to practice and realize that we need to tweak our theory because it doesn't apply to the real world. So that's how we do it. Right? We are processed because we have these ideas and we put them in practice and we say, okay, something else is missing. I go back there. I do the wash, rinse, repeat. Okay, now it works, and you keep doing it. So I just think it's a fantastic, simple process that we forget because it's so obvious.
Speaking of the application, the religious part, do you know of any instance in Kardec's life where he faced obstacles in doing this work and how he dealt with the obstacles that shows the application of his own philosophy into practice?
We were talking about this earlier today, Marcelo and I actually. And we were talking about the book Posthumous Works. And he talks a lot about that in there.
His mission, right?
His mission and how he, even in the Paris Spirit Society, which was the hotbed of innovation, right? It's where he put all his stuff in place. That he had a lot of folks that would say great things about him and behind his back would accuse him of different things, among others of not letting them share into the process, not giving them a voice, or all these kinds of things are very human by nature. And if you look at it, I think not only in his life, but all the lives of these great messengers that we see, no matter who they are very lonely by nature in the sense that they find themselves alone and people go against them, right? So ideas are very stupid until they aren't anymore, right? That's kind of like the mentality of people. A new thing comes up and everybody says, oh, that's stupid, it's nonsense, it's never going to work, until somebody makes it work, and then it's a great idea, right? So in the beginning, right, in the beginning, if you next up with Netflix, you guys know Netflix, right? If I had told you 10 years ago that you wouldn't have CDs anymore to watch things at home, and instead you do that through your computer, a lot of people say, that's just stupid. Like, nobody's ever going to do that. I have Blockbuster, I have Hollywood Video, I can go to, that's never going to work. It's nonsense. These people, they have this huge market, Nowadays, can you find a Blockbuster around here? Right? So somebody goes and works on that idea until the idea comes to this point where it disrupts the way you do things, right? It's called disruptive innovation. A really fun topic by Clayton Christensen that does some thinking out of the Insight Institute at Harvard. Talks about these ideas that disrupt the way we think and change fundamentally the way we do things. And I think folks that bring these things, they never have an easy way, because everybody goes against them, and until they don't anymore, and they yield to the stuff, right? So first they mock you, they ridicule you, then they attack you, right? It's serious. Then they ridicule. So I think it's an interesting message for us too, that in our lives, when we are doing something that we care about, oftentimes we are going to face opposition. And if we are balanced enough to listen to that opposition and take the best value out of it, we can do like Kardec, who used to imagine himself, he did a great exercise. When things got to him, or trying to avoid things getting to him, we find this in Posthumous Works at the end. Marcella can help me out here. At what part, pretty much towards the end, he talks about his mission, and he says that during some times where that happened, he would, just visualize himself in the spiritual world. looking back at things and all these problems, and then those problems seemed not to bother him that much anymore. They were just things that would bounce out. I think also in posture emergence, or some other time, he describes himself as, imagine rising above towards the sky, and just imagine all these attacks, these words and different things just coming down and bouncing off as if they were rain, kind of washing away, and him not paying attention to that. So I think our lives have that. And to bring our friend JC into the picture, Jesus Christ, we're going to see that his life was much the same way, right? Because the whole thing about, if you want to follow me, pick up your cross, right, and follow me. Means that, like, at the end of the day, very symbolically, his walk to being crucified was a lonely one, where very few people actually tried to help him carry the so-called cross, right? We have to take our own challenges ourselves. Obviously, people are going to help, but at the end of the day, we have to do that ourselves, because that's how we learn, right? When we do it ourselves, when we accomplish that, isn't that a great feeling? I've done it. Right? If other people do it for us, it's nice, but in the long run, we haven't really got that. So I think that's a fantastic thing for us to remember, but to be able sometimes to deal with this in the day-to-day life stuff, right? Because things happen and we just kind of like really get down, But the example of Christ and Kardec thinking about the end goal. At the end, when I accomplish this, it's going to be great. So I will have the strength to do this. So sometimes I'm feeling lazy. I really don't want to go help. We have this social system work, and every weekend, at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm making things up here. We go and we help this project, social, and then it comes like Saturday night, and I'm like, Sunday at 7 a.m., really? It's going to be so hard. I have to drive an hour to get there to help people build a home or feed the homeless, whatever it is. When that gets to you, or when during the week you're feeling really tired and you don't want to come to the group anymore because you're so tired at the end of the day, and it happens to all of us, it happens to me quite often actually. I just think about, you know what, I don't feel like it right now, but how will I feel after I've been there? I'm going to make an effort, it's going to be difficult, I'm going to drive there, there's going to be traffic, but once I come out of there, at the end of the day, I'm going to feel great, because I always do. So I remind myself of that end goal, and I think that Kardec did that to a great extent, because I don't think we can begin to understand how difficult it was for him, right? If it's difficult sometimes for us to come to the group or to have group, imagine how it was to kind of start something from scratch. Does it make sense? I think he was living proof of that. I think that's what's so great about it. Not only he did that, but he didn't take credit for it. He didn't use his own name. And I think that's a fantastic thing. I think it's brilliant. The examples of the real living, right? Some real conscious living examples.
I have a question more about Kardec, pre-Kardec. He was obviously intelligent, educated, and everything else. At some phase during his studies, he started to act as more of a medium, and then later on, most of the writings of the book seems to be from the studies that travel through him. So how do you separate the values of what he did personally to what was the input from the spirits world, and how do you see all that?
Great perspective. If you mean that he was the medium in the sense of he was the way in which things came together, I agree with you. He was never actually a medium as we know it. Like, he was actually never channeling communications from the spirits. He never was.
It was observations of other mediums?
Just observations, yes.
Okay.
So his deal really was to compile all that information and put it together. So he never had the ability, because mediumship is an innate ability, it's a human attribute that we all know we have. The difference is in degrees. What we call mediums today, Kardec used to call ostensive mediums. Those who have a high degree of that ability, which we all have, and that can channel communication to the spirit. So he used those who have this ability in a large extent to do this communication. He never did, which I think is really great, because it leads another extra degree of credence and credibility to the whole piece, because it wasn't him doing it. He was literally tasked with compiling and editing all this content from other people. So he didn't have the challenge of, oh, I'm going to put, if he was a medium, like, I'll put my content because I was the medium. That would have like taken some credibility away. Does it make sense? Like, if you're compiling stuff from other people, but you're all putting your stuff in the middle too, then you're just like, well, I'm favoring myself. So he never had a chance to do that, which was great. I love how the spirituality works, right? It doesn't give him that ability so that he can work with other people to bring the best out of it. Did I babble? Did that make sense? So I think it's fantastic that he does that, because he does something that we don't see very often. He goes out of his way to make use of other folks' works, right? Anonymous people that have contributed to a bunch of stuff, which is, we don't see that today. Nowadays, a lot of folks want to write new things and they want to publish them, and they make a point of being different than other people so they can sell their books, so they can make a living out of this. And it's one of the reasons why Spiritism always tells us that we should try to the extent that we can to give freely what we have received, because we don't want to go to the same route of depending on this to make a living. Because once you do, you go down a difficult path of, well, I have to bring money in, and then you have to do what you have to do. And then you kind of water down the message, right? I think that's a fundamental belief behind it. You don't want to have to resort to that. You want it to be as pure and extend itself by itself as you can. Am I making sense? I could go further into this, but I don't want to babble too much. Her first.
Just a quick observation. How did Kardec identify the people who would be delivering the messages? How did he identify mediums and to ask them these questions?
Let me just add to, because I had a very similar question in my mind, is because we also know that mediumship, not every medium is going to be a reliable medium. So, do we know anything about the selection process?
So I think that's the genius of Kardec. The more we think about it, you see how smart he is. He's a great, his friend and a continuator of Spiritism was one that he used to say that Kardec was common sense incarnate. Common sense incarnate. He was the very embodiment of common sense, which is not that common, right? Common sense is not that common. It's a funny thing about common sense. We all think we have it, but not all of us do. So he would really do this triangulation, right? He wouldn't necessarily go out there looking for mediums. They were already happening. These things have always happened, and they just happen to kind of happen to, I'm using a lot of happens at the same time, so let's back up a little bit. So this phenomena, communication, has always happened. It just so happened that during that period of time, it started to pop up a little bit more. It was almost the spirits trying to get our attention to say, let's get on with the program. But if you look back in history, all these things have always happened. So mediums have always been there with different names. So when he went to different places, he would notice people would tell him, hey, have you checked this place out? Have you checked that place out? And he would go and he would see things. But remember, he has no control over the communications. Although he did notice that the communications changed according to medium and according to those involved in those groups, which is another great topic for us to develop. And if you look at the mediums book later of how about to establish a serious group, it's not, we don't, in the Spiritist context, we just don't work with a medium. It's not just the medium that is the one responsible for the communication. We work in a team in the Spiritist group with mediums and other folks, because it's as a team effort. We all are connected and are making an effort, and through our actions, our desire, our prayers, our intentions, we strengthen the process that happens through the medium. But by working as a group, we then mitigate the shortcomings of an individual. Right? So together, with more people working in a mediumistic meeting, that is a controlled environment, more likely we are to get better communications, because we overcome each other's shortcomings. If you're having a bad day, somebody else will come with good, positive energy to overcome for that. So he didn't go out looking for mediums. A lot of folks just heard about his studies and start, getting wind of it, and then they would send stuff to him. And then he would go through them and say, well, I've had 15 communications that tell me X, and I see this one communication that tells me Y. Right, different things. I got 15 over here and one over here. I'm going to discard this one. It's an outlier. This might have been the result of not so great communication. Because those happen, and we are glad that those happen, right? Because it's important for us to know how to differentiate them. It's not just because we had a spirit communication that we should leave credence to it. we need to look at the quality of the communication, the content, if it makes sense. Because I tell you, right, there are many false prophets out there, right? We hear that in the New Testament, folks saying things, and if I say, oh, I've got a message from the Spirit, Emmanuel, a lot of us are familiar with it. A lot of people say, oh, a communication from the spiritual Emmanuel, from the Spirit, Joanna the Evangelist. Oh, this is a great communication. Well, it might not be. Somebody might have just attached a name to it, right? I tell you, if I tell you, I have a message for you right now, and it's from the Spirit X and X and X and X, you're going to pay attention to me more than if I were just speaking by myself. Why is that? Because we all like to know the connection with the higher spirits, but we have to be mindful of that. Right? So, in the New Testament, we have a great sentence, beloved, judge every spirit